Welcome to GameAbstract Lesson 1. In this lesson, you're going to learn a little bit about where the game abstract came from, the framework that's involved with developing games with the game abstract, and also some of the objects you'll be dealing with as you develop your games. So let's get to it. So the game abstract was originally developed in Python as a way to abstract using Python and a library called Pygame, and to allow students to develop video games a lot easier without having to deal with some of the nuanced syntax of working with Pygame. It's been a great experience. The students are really empowered to create some innovative games. But the one challenge with this library is that you had to have Python and Pygame installed. So that's where the Game Abstract JavaScript version comes in. It works natively in a browser, no additional libraries. All the code was done using just JavaScript join capabilities. Having said that, now let's go over to the framework and see what it is to do a game using the Game Abstract JavaScript version. So because it's a web framework, it means it's actually a web page. So here's your index HTML. Here's your web page. This is where your game will be drawn. Again, I'm not going to make this into a full web development introduction, which you don't really need. Just a little bit of appreciation as to what the framework involves is enough. So this is a web page, and here's some styling just to make the screen look nice. But here is probably the main thing you need to notice about the framework is that you'll be joining everything to an element called a canvas that has an ID of game. Again, some of this stuff, if you're not familiar with web development, it's okay. You'll kind of pick it up as you go. Obviously here you can specify the size of your canvas, the size of your game screen. And that's about all you need to know for this part, the canvas. The next two parts, again, most of the stuff you don't have to play with. You kind of just take for face value. But it's good to know how things work. Right? And that's what this series of videos are meant to do, just to give you an appreciation as to the environment you're working with. So GameLibrary.js, this loads the actual game library, which was created. This is what the game abstract's all about, this particular library. This loads up this script file, this JavaScript file. This is where your game is going to exist, where all the code that you're going to write is going to go. So let's go into this file. Let's talk about the game library, the abstract. So what I've done is there's a lot of objects that have been created to ease the development of a video game. So for instance, there's an object called a mouse, and here are some of the properties that you can play with. Here's an object called keys, so if you want to play with the keyboards, and here are some of the properties you'll be working with. Again, a lot of this stuff, it's really overview. I'm not expecting to be an expert after this video, but what I am hoping that you're able to do is just to appreciate that there's a bunch of stuff in the game library available to you. And through future videos and future game tutorials, you'll get experience working with different objects and how to use them. But the game library is here. You're more than welcome to look at it. You will notice that I've closed off some of the code so that way you don't have to necessarily get frightened by how much code is in here or the type of code. Honestly, to work with the game library, the only thing you have to appreciate is knowing what the objects are, such as here's a font object, and some of the functions. Specifically for a class, using a constructor kind of lets you know how to create a font, which means, when you create a font, you can specify a size, a family, a color, shadow. Same thing for a sound class, you specify the audio, and you'll get a lot of experience through tutorials on how to work with all these. This is this is the main object that always has to be created, a game object. This is what's going to handle kind of like all the processing of the game. So please remember that there cannot be any game without a game a variable that's instantiated as a game object. And what does the game object give us? It gives us a way to process the input, update the game, preload some resources, draw some text on the screen. So notice there's no mention of actual images, even though there's stuff here about background, but you'll learn that in your second game. The main object you'll most likely work with is a sprite object, which are your images. And again, you'll get experience as to how to create a sprite object. But as you go through here, you might want to dip in here and just see, what can I do with the sprite? Well, I can draw with a sprite. I can set its vector. I can move a sprite. I could check to see if it's collided with something else. Again, these are the important things that you're going to get experience with as you go through the game tutorials. And obviously, animations is another game even afterwards. Matter of fact, you'll be using animations with the Flappy Bird tutorial. So here's the game library. But again, you don't have to touch this. This is loaded up for you. What you do need to know is just realize what's available to you through the game library. So you can always kind of dip back in here to kind of figure it out. All your code will be going in here. And that's what we're going to start with the next video. So let's go back to our presentation. And in this lesson, we reviewed where the game abstract came from, the framework that's involved, and some of the game objects you'll be using throughout your tutorials. Enjoy.